Today, I'm so excited to talk about one of my favorite paint colors from Farrow & Ball, Duck Green. More importantly, I'm also going to give you a full-on color palette like we do on every episode of Color Code on the Paint People channel. So if you're looking for some free color advice, you've come to the right place, my pal. One thing I wanted to mention about Farrow & Ball paint in general is that they usually come in pre-mixed cans of paint at your local store, which is different than a lot of other paint companies that tint everything on site. The thing is though, because Duck Green is technically part of their archive collection, you will not be able to find it in those ready-made paint cans, unfortunately. But this doesn't mean that the color is discontinued, however, because Duck Green and any other archive collection paint color can be tinted just like any other company, so no worries there. If you know me, you know I'm a huge fan of green paint colors, especially these deep and darker ones. Generally speaking, colors like Duck Green tend to be really dynamic when used in or outside of your home, but they have this wonderful ability to coordinate really nicely with otherwise neutral colors that you might already be familiar with. And it really suits the more earthy, organic direction that contemporary design has been heading the last couple years. Now let's talk about what kind of color Duck Green is specifically. It is a classic British color with the slightest blue-green undertone in it and a light reflectance value that's probably around 10, which means it's deep and dramatic. I don't know this number for sure because Farrow & Ball doesn't really advertise it, but what I ended up doing is I just compared it to other greens that I know really well and I know their light reflectance value and just made that comparison. So yeah, pretty dark color all things considered. This rich hue is perfect for creating a really moody space, kind of like my moody studio. And I personally love using Duck Green on accent walls, on cabinets, even on doors for a really nice pop of color. It also pairs beautifully with any brass accents that you might have, or any gold elements, or natural wood tones, especially because, you know, the whole nature theme. It makes sense. And let me tell you though,
I tell you what,
this dark saturated shade of green allows it to work really well in rooms with little natural light, believe it or not, to create a really nice statement space. It is a pretty bold choice for sure, but I do find it to be a very sophisticated and timeless selection as well. But I'm a mean green machine over here, so you can take my word for it if you want. Now, if we talk about exterior colors for a second, this color can be used outside the home, front door or shutters, to add a pop of color and personality to your home's exterior. You might be shy to use it as the main body color for your home and, you know, use it all over, but you shouldn't be, because dark colors are really becoming part of the whole exterior design craze that I've been noticing recently. More people are more willing to go a little more dark and daring with their paint colors outside. I don't necessarily think that means go super vibrant and bright and pop arty. Probably not a good idea. You do want to pick something that isn't so vibrant that you're gonna get sick of it and want to repaint the next year. Very expensive to do that. Duck Green is sort of on that line of being very saturated, but not overly dynamic and polarizing when used outside. But I still would probably recommend it in smaller doses on your front door, on your shutters, those little accents here and there. Now going back inside the house, we have a color palette that I put together. All these different color pairings are going to be able to work together to create a fully fleshed out color scheme for your home. And it's 100% free. All you got to do is click that like button and maybe subscribe if you want more videos. 6 a week on this channel, by the way.
nice.
So of my Farrow & Ball color pairings, Ash Gray is the first choice, and it's also part of the archive collection. So you're going to have this color tinted, but what's nice about it is it ends up being a very relaxed, kind of green undertoned, warm neutral, and it has a bit of kind of goldy beiginess to it, which will help differentiate itself from Duck Green specifically. It's also nice because it's a lighter color. It's kind of in that mid-tone territory, which means you're going to be able to justify using it in other parts of your home where you don't want a mega deep dark color. This is a color that's really going to coordinate nicely because it does have that green undertone as well. Not nearly as prominent as Duck Green, but it's there. So there is that relationship between the two. Now for the second color, I picked something very similar in terms of darkness, being a little more like a mid-tone as well, but it's called Jitney. And unlike Ash Gray, which we just talked about, this is a paint color that offers something more complementary, not only with its brown kind of relaxed base, but also its more apparent red clay undertone. And that will be much more accentuated next to anything green leaning, which the last two colors are in varying degrees of greeniness. Now, while complementary colors can be pretty drastic when they're paired with one another, Jitney and Ash Gray, they tend to be fairly desaturated, all things considered, so even though their undertones are really complementing one another, which can be a bit jarring in practical use conceptually, the fact that they are more muted and maybe a tad neutral leaning helps them be part of the color scheme without really pulling a ton of focus. So that's great. Now this sort of reddish kind of pattern continues with our third color pairing, which is London Clay, one of my favorite dark browns that Farrow & Ball offers. And they claim that this is a paint color that's loaded with magenta pigment, which allows it to feel very much like kind of an earthy soil sort of coloration. It is technically a warm brown, but not to the point where it's gonna feel like fiery and orange leaning. It has this mellow, dark chocolate effect to it, which will also complement duck green and ash gray because of that red and green sort of playing with each other. And it'll really slide in perfectly with Jitney. So you have these two separate pairings that can also kind of intermingle with one another in very interesting ways. Now we talked about the main colors of the palette, the wall colors, I guess you could say. Trim colors, also very important because you got to paint your baseboards, your doors, and your frames, all that good stuff. Schoolhouse White is a great choice if you want something that is a pretty timeless sort of warm white kind of look. Essentially, it's something fairly soft, but not too overpowering. So a lighter trim color, but not stark white. Teresa's Green is my kind of interesting trim choice that introduces a bit of color. So you obviously have that bit of green coming back into the scope. So you have that sort of through line onto your trim, but there's a little bit of an added blue element in the undertones, which creates a different feel altogether. But I do find it kind of very refreshing when I see it. Probably not the obvious choice if you wanted your one trim color to go throughout your entire home, but for those special spaces where you want something a little bit different, that could be a perfect choice. A little more intentionality with your trim color choice. Now here's the palette all together. Please let me know what you think, and we have one more right over here if you want to check it out.